So this semester, I interned with US Servos, which is like an international network of hosts and travelers in a variety of different countries, which travel through the organization and visit. So you can travel to another country and stay with hosts from that country. And the whole point of it is to create cultural or chance for a cultural exchange and quote unquote peace building, which is very ambitious, but I think it's mostly supposed to give people like a view of another country on a more like authentic level. Mm-hmm. But being at this internship, that in connection with a couple of like women in development and technology and development classes that I've taken and am taking, we've brought up some questions that we're going to talk about. So the first question is, can foreign aid organizations like the Peace Corps exist without reinforcing negative aspects of development, or are they inherently problematic? What do you think, Sam? Sam Dunlap, everybody. Take it away.
How about, I think an organization like Peace Corps and those sorts of organizations were created so that the home country, like the US, is able to impact a developing country. I think it's a very imperialistic model of helping other countries. So I don't think it's impossible for a foreign aid company to help out in a country. I just think it depends on how that company is influencing the country and whether it's helping them become more independent, or if it's like a lot of projects with the Peace Corps and making it so that these countries are more dependent on aid from the US. I think aid that helps countries become more independent could potentially be beneficial.
Yeah. Well, I think like in some cases they're building things like Western hospitals, and then it's like the knowledge isn't there either. So then they're like importing this Western knowledge into those countries in addition to like, I mean, all the other colonial influence that's already been had in that area. And it's like they already have, I mean, there are certain aspects of Western medicine that are definitely good and save lives, but I think in a way it's also that sort of like hierarchy of knowledge, like just the like sort of blind belief that like Western medicine and like these American or just Western hospitals are like the way to do it, like the way to help people. I feel like that also reinforces that like need for more help too. It's like the technology and the knowledge is being like pioneered in the US and Europe, like medical knowledge.
Yeah.
And so it's like those countries become more reliant on us.
Yeah, it's that whole idea of going into another country and introducing some of your technology, some aspect of your society, and in a way forcing them to adapt to it, and then either leaving or like lowering the amount of aid you're giving to them, like colonizing a country and then removing your occupation. It's like a half-assed attempt of bringing them up in your up to the standard of your society, but then you look at it and it's like if they are brought up to the standard of your society, they become a part of your society. So I think it's going to those countries and building hospitals, however beneficial they may be. It's you're introducing technology, something that you're imposing your society on theirs.
Yeah.
And you're just trying to homogenize the world. And
yeah. Well, I mean, it is very similar to like colonialism, like going into a country, sort of overthrowing whoever's in power and then leaving.
Yeah.
Which the U.S. loves to do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's sort of... Because in that case, we're just, like, wrecking them.
Right.
It's like, we don't like who's in charge right now. I mean, for instance, like, what's going on in Venezuela.
Yeah.
Right now. It's like, the U.S. doesn't like it, so we're, like, giving our opinion and forcing their hand in a way. But it's like, they're no better off for that. It's all personal interest. And I feel like in a way even like the Peace Corps is like that, because even people who go into the Peace Corps, I think in a way it's sort of more of like for self-benefit than for the benefit of others. It's like you're doing the Peace Corps because it's going to give you like experience, and it gives you like, I mean, it gives you something to put on a resume, and it's supposed to be like this life-changing experience for you, and then it makes you like different in some way, and also makes you feel like you've had like a big impact, like makes you feel good about yourself. I don't know, I feel like in a way it's sort of more of like a selfish interest in some way than it is of like a true interest in helping someone else.
Yeah. Yeah. I think...
Not to bash everyone that does the Peace Corps, but...
Yeah.
What about organizations such as U.S. Servas that exist to bridge gaps between cultures? Are these organizations as problematic, or are they free of the issues that AIDS-specific organizations have?
Well, I think how you described what U.S. Servas does, it doesn't seem like if you were to travel to one of these countries, you would leave much impact. If you're only going to be there for a week, you're not working on projects that are changing their society in any way, and you're just doing some form of tourism and you're going to experience that. I think that's not necessarily problematic because it's if you travel, I mean, if you travel and stay with a host family, that's definitely better because you're not supporting, Marriott going into Sudan and like building this huge resort that you're going to go stay at. And that's an issue. You look at countries in the Caribbean and there are these, wonderful places to go visit. But when people go to visit, they just visit these resorts owned by companies, foreign corporations, and then you look outside of those resorts and it's, you're not like experiencing the real culture oftentimes.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah, and oftentimes the impact of that resort has a negative impact on the environment, so the community outside of that resort are having to bear the consequences of your leisure.
Yeah.
But I think an opportunity like going and staying with the host family, if you're going to be there for a week or two, I don't think that's really an issue, just because you're not leaving much of an impact. And I think it might open your eyes to how you could potentially change your lifestyle, how you could potentially change your community, your society. It's just the sharing of ideas.
Yeah.
And I think, there's a potential of making your life, your community a little bit more sustainable in experiencing the operations of someone else's community.
Mm-hmm. Having been a little more engaged in the organization itself, I definitely went into it thinking like, oh, this sounds really awesome, and like why isn't this more popular than it is? Which I'm actually not sure why it's not more popular than it is. I think it's just like really bad branding on their part, really bad publicity, and like a very poorly organized nonprofit with like a very opinionated board. Honestly, that's like their biggest problem. But
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, I know, me either. But they definitely do. I think in some ways they definitely reinforce the like development narrative. For instance, on the all the pamphlets that they have, several places on the website, their main picture really is a picture of this girl, like in her 20s, sitting in this like dirt village somewhere in Africa, presumably, with a bunch of small African children like crowded around her, looking very engaged, and she's smiling down at this like baby, like African baby in her arms. And I feel like it just like reinforces the narrative of like the white savior. For instance, some of the pictures, because I've been publishing a lot of photos for them, and some of the pictures were like these like middle-aged white people with like in African schools with these little kids, and that they've like brought them supplies. I don't know. I feel like that reinforces that. Also, I mean, it's definitely good for those kids to have school supplies, but I feel like it's just the way that it happens. Like that system is sort of flawed.
An interesting case, because I think growing up in the US, I mean, even watching commercials for, saving hungry children in Africa, that's not necessarily the case at all. And so you're raised thinking that there's all these underprivileged children in these villages, and their standard of living isn't anywhere near yours. So there is that bit of white savior narrative behind someone who's only been exposed to that sort of upbringing, that sort of education, and thinking about those places in that way. I think if you go to one of those villages, however good you can go thinking, I'm going to help these people, like with good intentions. However, that's, in the grand scheme of things, that's not going to be a very good intention, just because, oftentimes those people, it's just a different culture. It's not any lesser than ours. It's a lot of ways they do things are far more sustainable than how we do the same thing.
Or private corporations from developed countries provide donations or aid to developing countries without reinforcing the same power dynamic.
Some individual contributions to other countries are beneficial. I think a small contribution, like, for example, in Southern California, a lot of the clothes that are donated, if they aren't donated, say, to like a specific humane society or non-profit that are raising funds, a lot of them will get shipped south of the border or picked up in the US and brought south of the border to be sold as secondhand. And then those are sold at a lower price than traditional, or clothes that are already being produced and sold in that market. So I think sometimes individual contributions of textiles and things that are just going to be repurchased in those countries are really undermining to that country's existing market. But I think a technology that can possibly increase the standard of something that somebody already does. It's like a more sustainable cooking method or a more sustainable way of powering electricity that this person or this community already needs.
Mm-hmm.
Or even those organizations that go abroad to people that don't have the means to build a deep well.
Yeah.
And so they have to travel a fair distance to find water. And a company will go and help them dig a well, and so that they don't have to travel. That might have adverse effects on the landscape as far as like draining the groundwater for their environment, but I think if it's a smaller community, it's not going to have that much of an effect on the environment. So I think those sorts of things are beneficial contributions. And that's really just sharing technology, sharing ideas that better the way that everybody everybody does the same like sort of things. Like we all need water, we all need food,
Mm-hmm.
agriculture. I mean, so much of the climate change now, there are so many like forms of agriculture, ways of agriculture that climate change has just decimated. So now, if you went in and tried to help some farmer in Central America who relies on rainfall in order to irrigate his crops, but now, it's an extremely scarce, or the frequency in which it rains is really volatile now due to climate change. I think if you tried to introduce or help formulate some other form of agriculture that's going to help them do what they've always done, I think that's beneficial.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely think sharing is better than giving in a way, because, for instance, like the whole buy one give one model of the company is like in a way to like local economies. Like first of all, you're donating shoes, which like people don't necessarily need shoes. It's like something that we have or the founder of the company just decided that people needed. It wasn't someone with like an inside knowledge or anything. It's just this like wealthy white guy, but he just founded this company, started giving shoes to these like kids in Africa and South America and countries that he thought needed them, but in reality it like undermines the local businesses that sell shoes, and also like it does sort of like foster dependence too then, because then those businesses are gone, and then it's like those people are unknowingly choosing to like rely on the developed countries. It's like falling back on them when they like were more independent beforehand.
Yeah, it's that whole relying on imported goods.
Yeah.
Once
really a problem we have here too.
Yeah, definitely. Like specializing in growing crops, and now, so much of our agricultural space in this country is not being used to its full potential as far as providing food to humans. Instead, it's just soy, corn, wheat, canola, that sort of stuff. Whereas now it's like if we stop receiving imports from Central America, South America for fruits and veggies as local food, it's once those imports stop coming and they're not going to have access to any of the goodies.
That's a problem of climate change.
Yeah.
It's inevitable.
Yeah.
If a non-problematic aid organization were to exist, what would it look like?
I think an organization like that, it would be non-problematic if they work to help communities without the means tackle problems like climate change. I mean, people in the southern hemisphere are going to be facing climate change far worse than we are for a long time.
Yeah.
I think a beneficial aid organization would go and say, like, we need to, like, here are some ideas, here are some ways that, you can adapt, that we can, that we've generated that will help you adapt to the changing climate. I think that would potentially be beneficial. I think if it didn't change, it wasn't like, here's the introduction of a safe way.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to be importing. Now you can't grow any of your own stuff. You're going to be having to rely on this. But, if there was some sort of...
I totally agree. I feel like the reason that's not more common is because it's not out of self-interest. That's like totally out of like, I feel like the goodness of humanity. That's like what that would be. But also because a lot of the things that are in place, they're all for profit. Like even like, the World Bank and things like that. Like they give money with the expectation of getting more in return.
Right.
And like companies like Tom's and private corporations and even just individuals like giving contributions, like you get a tax break, you get like the feeling of, you get to feel good, you get to sleep at night if you give some money to some, I don't know, you give some poor person a cow that they don't even want.
Yeah.
But
I think everything, especially in our society, everything runs off of money. Like usually there's the rare few people who will do stuff for free and will do stuff without the expectation of bettering their position in society. But I think, especially when it comes to an organization, I don't think there are many out there. There are definitely some, not to discredit those, but I think there are it's definitely a majority of them that, get something out of it. Because how are you going to pay employees to help you do this kind of stuff? How are you going to support your life if you're not going to make money off of it?
Yeah, it's like a lot of time and like energy put into things too.
Mm-hmm.
Even just like emotional labor.
Yeah.
Is something so like sad.
Yeah. That's true.